I always tell them, and I credit them with this, they saved my veterinary career. They really did. Because as soon as I was back into the hospital with them and seeing everything that they were doing every day, they were doing all of the things that I'm so passionate about, but just they're all together. They're all working towards a common goal. They're helping, they're facilitating health, like just everything that they had to deal with. It was exactly where I needed to be. And I was like, you guys saved my career.
Shannon Gervais was recommended to be a guest on the podcast. Shannon loves learning and loves people, especially people in veterinary medicine. Shannon is a registered veterinary technician, RVT, in Canada. She has been a veterinary technician in clinic, worked in veterinary pharmaceutical sales, was a manager and director with VCA Hospitals, leading learning and development, and is now head of people operations with Galaxy Vets. We talk about the importance of listening, allowing people to grow and develop, and believing in people's best intention. Shannon is a wonderful human, so on to our conversation. So what is your start in veterinary medicine? When did you know you wanted to be part of this profession?
Oh, that's such a cool question. And it's one of those ones I've had the pleasure of sharing with many people because it's, I'm super passionate about it, obviously, but it's, if you start to look in my photo albums from when I was little, I'm pretty much like walking and you see me with animals in almost every picture. So it was kind of like, destined to be. But I remember in high school, they started to drill you pretty early on what you wanted to do. And I was just like, well, I want to be a vet tech. And for me, I knew what it was only because I had always insisted on going to the veterinarian whenever my dog was going. So I loved it. So I had always gone. And then, of course, when I got into the vet practice and my dog was going through her appointment, I'd always be like, show me more. But I never wanted to be a vet. I actually only ever wanted to be a tech. So I, of course, with the controversy with the title, I won't even go down that. But I always used to explain to everybody that I wanted to be a veterinary nurse. And that was because that was 30 years ago and nobody really knew what techs were at the time. So
yeah. Well, so that's wonderful. I'm so glad because I feel like sometimes veterinarian is the only thing people know to say. And there's so much more than that to work with animals. So I am glad that you already had in your mind this path that you wanted to take. And so what about going into the schooling? Because I know that is also a opportunity for a lot of different paths in this field. So what was going to school like for you?
oh, that's awesome. So it was fantastic for me. And it still is this way, but it was pretty competitive here in Canada to get into vet tech school. There was only a limited number of seats. It's still like that for the most part, but very small class sizes. And so highly competitive, driven by marks, that kind of thing. So I had okay marks, but I wasn't at like the top of the food chain when it came to my grades. I had to find alternative means to get into school. So I ended up taking a general arts and science diploma kind of at the same time when I was applying to get into vet tech. So I did that route, got into vet tech the following year, and then I ended up spending 3 years at St. Lawrence College in Kingston, Ontario. And it was pursuing a vet technology diploma at that time. And interesting for me, I had actually thought that I was going to go into the lab. That was like, I was 100% going to be a lab veterinary tech. So working in research, that kind of thing. That was my jam for 3 years. That's all I wanted to do. That's why I chose St. Lawrence, because they had the pathway to make that happen with the schooling. It wasn't until I got in to my practicum in my 3rd year that I decided, after a month of being in research, I'm like, yep, nope, I'm going to find another path. So I ended up really enjoying my practicum in the hospital setting. And so I ended up staying in companion animal medicine in hospitals for about 8 years.
So may I ask what it was? What was the switch where you're like,
Oh,
oh, no.
yeah. I think it was the cinder block walls and no windows. So yeah, you spend a lot of time I mean, every research place is different, but it immediately made me think, okay, well, I'm definitely more social, and I really enjoy clients and stuff like that. So I needed to explore some other options. So
Well, when you said that, I was like, wow, what, we would have been missing out on your personality outside of research. So I'm glad that not that research isn't, fascinating. We need people there, but yes, I definitely see you being a people person and, out there doing exactly what you do. But there were a lot of different paths you took to where you are now. So do you mind sharing a little bit of your journey all the way through now?
Sure. I love that because it always strikes me as so unusual that people don't know how many different options are out there, but it's true. We don't learn about them in school. So unless you're, seeking to find something, you don't necessarily know. There's so many options. So I had I had a really cool talk from someone who came to the school, and they had mentioned, one of the pathways that you could take was a sales pathway into veterinary pharmaceuticals. That was the only other pathway that I knew of, by the way. It was either companion animal clinic, research lab, or sales. That was all I knew. So after 8 years, I was always super interested in networking, always went to the conferences, always learning, always meeting with reps that came into the hospital so that I could learn different things, just absorbing all of that. And then finally, after 8 years, I was just like, well, maybe it's time for a change. There wasn't any option for me where I was geographically located to move into ER, or anything like that to pursue my VTS. Any of those things, they weren't options just based on geography of what was around me at the time. And the fact that I had a little girl. I was a single mom and supporting a little girl. So I made the decision actually to jump into the veterinary sales world. And that was another huge career eye opener. It's just like, wow, learning galore, right? Like nonstop learning. And I think it's pretty much been that, well, my entire 22 years of my career in vet tech. So.
Well, and going back to me calling you a people person, I think sales is a great way to learn about people. So, I mean, what lessons have you pulled from a sales position that you feel is extremely important and applicable in even a clinic setting?
That one's so easy. It's actually communication, right? So, I mean, everyone always says like, "Oh, I'm no good at sales," or "I'm this and I'm that," and I'm always like, "You have to sell every single day, no matter what job you have." I would argue even what profession you're in. Like, it's literally whenever you're educating someone, you can call it education, you can call it sales, call it whatever you want, but it's communication, and it's how you communicate with people. And, veterinary medicine is no exception to that. So when you're in the hospitals, I learned a ton about communication. I learned a ton about the right questions to ask. Just everything to do with those pieces of it is super, super helpful in the veterinary hospital situation too.
So, where did you find yourself after sales, and did you
Yeah.
have any aha moments with your career
Well,
or life?
it was always about learning, right? So I was like, I ended up my first sales position. I ended up learning bovine medicine, which companion animal girl learned 100% like bovine medicine to a point where I was actually giving producer talks, and I loved it. It was fantastic, completely different world. Even it's veterinary medicine, it's completely different world in large animal versus companion animal. So I actually found a passion that I didn't even realize I had. And so I pursued that for about 4.5 years. And then I decided that I really did want to get back into companion animal medicine because that was truly what I was deep down passionate about. And I wanted to be back in with companions. So I ended up, at that point in my life, I made like massive change in life and across the country. I left Ontario and I moved with my daughter and we moved out west and I started with a new job. And so we ended up, so I was back in companion animal medicine in sales, working for a different company. Again, the whole learning curve and change galore, right? New province, new everything, but it was nothing more than fantastic. So there was tons of stuff going on, both personally and professionally. But it was another huge learning experience for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, and from vet tech and all the different areas that you have been, have you noticed any evolutions of veterinary medicine? Anything that has really kind of called to you that's kind of unique in the direction the profession is going, shall I say? I'm trying to leave it open. Whatever comes to you.
Tough one like that. There's been so many. It's actually kind of hard to figure out which one to focus on. There's been I would honestly say there's been so many different directions. Even when you look at, the evolution of an RVT and where techs were, where they're going, where they can go, that kind of thing. I think that's been substantial over the last few years, especially. And everything that's happened in medicine-wise, that's a completely different view, right? Like after I took a number of years in sales and then regional management. So my career started to pivot from the animal side into the people side. If you can't tell, that's kind of the way it was going. And it's because I love people. I love people equally as much as I love pets and animals in general. And I really started to focus my passion on those people. When I eventually left the pharmaceutical side, it was as a regional manager. I needed a change. And I ended up taking a brief stint out of veterinary medicine. I thought I needed a break. It was actually my own burnout period. And I thought I needed a break from veterinary medicine. So I was actually a little bit mortified and pretty lost at the time. Lucky for me, I just followed my instincts and, okay, try something new. You want it, see what it's like, try something totally different. And lucky for me, I did have an opportunity. It was on the human health side. And it was pretty short, very valuable experience, one that I will never forget and truly appreciate because it showed me that it wasn't veterinary medicine that I was burnt out of. I just needed to find what that passion was in veterinary medicine again. So I went to the human side. I had an amazing opportunity. And I said, "Oh, I really want to go back to vet. So somebody please take me." So I ended up.
Do you mind if I ask a question? Because you said that you were in a time of burnout and you were mortified. Can you explain what you mean by that? What were you mortified about?
Truly and honestly, I was mortified that like veterinary medicine is all I know. Like career path is one thing, but it's a passion. It's not just it's not just something that I do for work. Like I love it. I love everything about it. And so for me, what was really hard for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling this feeling of burnout. I don't even know if I knew what to call it at the time, to be honest, but I just had a really a feeling. And it was hard for me to understand what was going on. And when you love something that much and you're thinking about leaving it, that's what I was mortified about. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to leave vet med. That's what's going on. I have to leave. I have to find something else. And I don't know anything else. That's all I know. I have lots of skills that I can apply to various different things in any different platform of work. But I love veterinary medicine. So I'm like, wow, am I really going to do this? Yep, I'm really going to do it. I did it. That's what I mean. I encourage people all the time. Like you have to follow what what's going on in here. Like sometimes step outside of that comfort zone, see what it's like. It might be the best thing that ever happened to you. Or you might realize, nope, there was just something else I needed to change. And that's okay too. And that's exactly what I did. When I stepped out, started working with people from a different way of life, I would say, the non-veterinary way. It was wonderful. It's just that I was like, man, I just need to be back in with vet people.
We are a unique breed. Pun intended,
yes. So unique and so special. And you know what? It's such a gift. Like it really is. It's such a gift. So I just needed to step away from it to realize that I needed to be more immersed in it. So that's what was missing. I literally have said that the vet hospital that I went to become the general manager of, very, very large facility, ER specialty hospital, over 100 people working there. I always tell them, and I credit them with this, they saved my veterinary career. They really did. Because as soon as I was back into the hospital with them and seeing everything that they were doing every day, they were doing all of the things that I'm so passionate about, but just they're all together. They're all working towards a common goal. They're helping, they're facilitating health, like just everything that they had to deal with. It was exactly where I needed to be. And I was like, you guys saved my career. I love you for it, because you are the reason that I do what I need to do, because I want to help you. I want to help you in hospital. I want to help you succeed. I want to help you in every way, shape, and form. That's what I needed. So that's literally what catapulted the second part of my career, or third.
It's not always like a single direction, right? Life, it can be twists, turns, layers, all sorts of things that are going on in life. And so I think this will help people if I'm going to kind of go back and dig in a little bit. When you went into the human health side and you realized that it wasn't that you needed to leave veterinary medicine. It was that you needed to have your unique part in it. So what was that process? And I'm kind of digging in to maybe help some other people who might want to try to figure out, what is my unique spark in this field that I'm so passionate about? What were some of the thoughts, or were there people that kind of helped influence a certain questions? What was that like?
There's a lot of self-reflection that comes into that, right? And understanding your own personality strengths, I think is just you can never do enough when it comes to understanding yourself and others, right? So I'm a huge fan of anything to do with personality training, helping identify what that looks like for you, trying to understand yourself. Self-reflection is a huge piece of that, in which I had to do a lot of, just to be able to see, like, okay, I really want to do this. What skills do I have now? What do I need? And where do I need to go with that? So what am I passionate about? It always ends up being the same thing, right? Like I'm super passionate about like the veterinary teams and their patients and their clients. So what can I do to help make sure that those things get what they need? So making sure that, our teams are happy and sustained and living their best jobs, like that. Those are things that mean a lot to me, because I love it and I want other people to love it. And how can I help with that? So that's kind of where my career started to change again. And then, moving into a little bit more on the operations side, how can I directly affect what was happening at the hospital level? So I think when it comes to, there's not just one particular thing. There's kind of like a bunch of things. And I did have a lot of conversations with people that I really trusted in the industry. My own mentor came into play. He kind of came in later in my life, but I had huge respect for Dr. Craig Mosley, who's been on your show.
Oh, I love him. Yes.
Yeah. Right. But like, just, having those types of conversations, really meaningful conversations where you can be vulnerable and discuss, hey, you know what, I really think that this is something that I'm interested in. Like, what are your thoughts? What does that look like? Do you have any advice? Like different things like that. You have to be able to have those conversations with somebody, and then support, right? Like my husband and my family in general, they support all of my crazy ideas, right? It's like, okay, what crazy idea is Shannon going to do next? And it's like, oh, okay, this, okay. All right. She's going to go back to school for this now or that, or, whatever courses I'm taking, that kind of thing. But it's just a curious mind, and how to keep it, on the right track, I would say. But there's always conversations for me. I had probably, I can remember conversations like literally every person that walked into my office and had an impact on me, professionally. There's literally too many to name, but there's so many things that you have to do. Like you have those conversations, self-reflect. Not say that enough, because I really believe in that. And just see like, where do you want to go and what fits, right? And be ambitious. Go for it. What's holding you back? The worst thing that someone can say is no, sorry, we can't help you. Okay, no problem. I'll do it anyway.
I'll do it on my own or find someone else, right?
Yep.
Well, and then I remember in our previous conversation, you talked about having working with some really interesting individuals. And there was one in particular that I remember, and she seemed to be extremely bold when she had a certain way of practicing medicine that not everybody understood, because it was different than what they were used to doing. Was that also impactful, watching someone who was willing to do something that was a little bit different and see how that impacted patient care as well?
Absolutely. I think that's what's really cool. And I use different people and examples all the time. There's various things that some people don't even realize how big of a role model they are, even to somebody that's like considered in leadership, right? It's like, that's what I always say, like every single member of the team is so important. But I had one of our amazing like rock star techs that schooled me on basically, how can I put it? She was challenging discounting and stuff like that at an operational level, when it comes to DVMs that might want to discount something to a client, but they end up discounting an RVT skill. And so she spoke up about it, and I was like, wow, that's next level. I'm like, I've never heard of anybody doing that. And I use her as an example all the time, as somebody that, just really understood things, like what it meant, operationally, both emotionally, like there's a connection there. I use her all the time as an example. She's a brilliant human, brilliant.
Brilliant and bold, I think, are wonderful combinations. We need a lot of that. Hi, we'll be back with the second half of the show after this quick break. But first, I wanted to take a moment and thank you for listening to the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. If you're enjoying the show, the best way to support us is to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us to reach more listeners, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. And now back to the episode. Since you have such a passion on the veterinary team, it is probably no surprise to you that there is a problem with staffing in our profession, retaining talent. What are you seeing right now with the challenge of retaining talent? I think there's burnout on all levels in our profession. What are you seeing with burnout and talent retention?
That's a great question, Megan. And it's interesting because that whole piece on the talent was actually kind of a second part of my career that I did not anticipate that I was going to do. So that's kind of more along the lines of an HR in the recruitment process. And I ended up doing recruiting operations, which was crazy. It's like RVT and then all this experience and then recruiting operations. So I helped to build out what that looks like. Learned another like ton about that at that period in time as well. So there's lots of things. It's multimodal, right? Like there's so many different aspects to the challenges that we're having, especially with turnover and everything like that. I think COVID, of course, hit another realm of like, okay, the turnover again. There's been lots of different things that are affecting that. I think the key thing is coming at addressing it with a multimodal approach. There's not one size fits all for everything in this department. It really is going. I've had individuals tell me multiple different things. Some people are leaving because they just can't handle the shortages anymore. Some people are leaving because they can't handle the way their clients are talking to them anymore. Some people are leaving because they're not challenged. Some people aren't compensated. Like there's so many different things that we need to like literally stop I call it the leaky bucket, right? Like we need to stop the leaky bucket. And I'm really happy that there are so many different initiatives that are happening out there to help stop the leaky bucket. There's so many different things, from the regulatory boards getting involved, trying to discuss, what does this look like for vet techs specifically? What does this look like for DVMs? Addressing salary. Like my company's gone after a number of different things that they believe will help with preventing like vet tech turnover, for example, and trying to help with the culture and the various different pieces when it comes to compensation. So there's a number of different things that are happening. The whole retention, I mean, honestly, I always get down to individuals in hospitals because, I mean, everybody's leaving for different reasons if they are leaving. There's also a lot of people that are coming into the industry that, like we need to make sure that, podcasts like this, for example, get out there so that everyone understands, if you have reached a maximum time in one particular role within veterinary medicine, that's okay. It's okay. There's lots of stuff you can do. You don't have to leave the profession. Get back here.
There's plenty of opportunities. Yes, exactly.
Plenty. But I do think that there's a number of different strategies. So, I mean, the compensation and rewards, I've seen a lot of companies trying to help with these types of things, making sure that they're managing CE, different things like that. But there's lots of different reasons why people are leaving. Making sure that culture is, something that is a high priority in a hospital. One of the things that I learned in recruiting when I asked a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, I'm talking RVT, CCS, tech assistants, specialists, everything. And I can honestly tell you, what do you think, Megan, is the number one thing whenever I asked anybody, what is the most important thing to you when you're looking for your job? What do you think their answer was?
The people. It's got to be something about who they work with, the culture.
It is. Every single time. It's the number one thing. I'm like, what does that tell you about our industry? We really care about what our day-to-day looks like, and we really care about those people. We want to have those partnerships. We want to have those relationships. We want to have fun.
Crazy idea, right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't go to work to be bored all day. So those things are really important. So I always try to bring that back. What does that look like now, right? So we can make sure that we're checking the boxes on all the things that we need to make sure that we are at the top of our game on when it comes to compensation, benefits, all of these things for techs, for DVM, CCS, TAs, like everything. What else, right? Let's make sure that we've got an environment that people want to go to work in. And if we don't, what are we going to do about it? Right?
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Well, you're right. I think there are definitely some foundational things that we can work on to improve the turnover, making sure that we have a very welcoming, fun, learning type of culture. But I also want to thank you for calling out that it's still really important to ask each individual what they are looking for, what they specifically need, because I think one of the worst things we can do is just assume, say, oh, I've been researching this turnover and I know it's this, this, and this, and just to go with that and not stop and actually ask the individual what they are looking for and what their concerns are. Part of the culture is I want to be heard.
Totally. Right. And that's the thing I love combining, we're all like deep down scientists, right? Like we all love data. So I love combining data and taking, really elaborate surveys or, making sure that they've gone out to a huge geographical area and then making sure that a number of people participate in them. But taking that information from those surveys in all those different forms and coming up with some results like that's fantastic. That's like, okay, wow, wholly thoughtful that, that you actually surveyed, right, a number of people before you put together a plan. I'm like, wow, that's what I have to huge plug for Galaxy Vets, because that's literally everything that we do. And I love that. It's not just somebody has a theory and then they roll with it, right? It's thoughtful, it's collected, it's planned, and then it's showed. So then you take that and you say, okay, like this is our foundation. Now we're going to roll that out to the individuals. And that's what's really cool, because you have to have people that want to engage with the individuals. I always want to know, like, I want to meet with every single person that's in the hospital team. And I want to learn, like, hey, like, why are you here? Why are you here? What do you love about vet medicine? Tell me. Okay, great. What's some things that you would change if you had the power? What's your magic wand? What would you change? Okay, awesome. Right. So then we're able to kind of just see, but it always blows me away that the conversations don't happen. Where are the conversations? It's simple. You ask somebody, like, literally, what do you want to do? Like, what are you passionate about? It has always blown me away that those are not like top questions being asked, no matter where you are, but that's how you connect with someone. Like, what are you passionate about? Tell me what you're thinking. It's not, what's your 5-year plan?
Right.
That's great. That's 5 years away.
Yeah. I think especially us with a very demanding job, sometimes we get stuck in that I just got to survive till tomorrow. And so if you throw out what's your 5-year plan, it's like, how are you asking that question? So kind of starting with what, makes you smile during a day, and, when are you the most excited when you think about veterinary medicine? Those are types of questions you can build on and help them kind of construct a longer term plan.
It is for sure. And it's amazing what you can find out. I love asking people that, because, you can find out a lot of things, and they do, sometimes people don't always share their ambitions and their goals, that easily. But when you start to have conversation and you care about what those goals and ambitions are, then people will let you in, like, oh, okay. I had a conversation with somebody who was a lead at the hospital that I was working at, very, very valuable person. And she had aspirations to, grow her career into being a manager, and then being like a top manager, that kind of thing. And I'm like, wonderful. Sometimes as employers, you kind of are like, oh no, that person wants to leave me. Like, what am I going to do? And it's like, no, it's like, that person wants to leave me. They need to grow. And I want to be part of that. I want to help that person with that goal. Those are the things that I would say that for me, I'm probably most proud of in my career, is helping those people succeed. Those are the conversations that you have to have. And for me, that's what I have the most joy out of when I have seen people that have gone on their path that I helped. And I know I don't need the credit. I know I started that conversation.
So for the people who do say, but I'm already desperate for help, why are you telling me to help people leave me? Can you explain the return on investment when you actually help people grow?
Well, first of all, the most important thing to recognize is that if you're not asking the questions, that people are they're either thinking it or they're not, right? So you don't know. So if you don't ask the question, you don't know what their aspirations are. When I first started in veterinary hospitals, did anybody ask me what my aspirations were? Nope, they didn't. We talked about lots of other things, but nobody knew that I had intentions on growing my career and like what I wanted to do. Was I going to go into VTS? Was I going to do something in ER? Like we weren't having those conversations, but that's the way that my brain works, right? As I was always thinking like, okay, I would like to, specialize, or I would like to grow. I need education. Most of us do. Like that's the way our brains work, is we like that stuff. So when you're not asking the questions, you're doing yourself an injustice, because you're letting something could already be in the minds of the team that you have. They could have those goals for themselves. If you're not able to help grow them and grow them for your team, they will leave. They will guarantee you leave. So you have an option. When you have people like that, they're the people that they really do have aspirations for. Like, I want to do big things. They're creative. They want to talk to you about their ideas and stuff like that. Like you'll find them in every single practice, and I love them. And you need to take them and you need to say, okay, what are the things that you love? What are the things that you want to do? What can I help you with? Let's just think about those things and then start to work toward the plan. It's like literally their own personal growth plan, right? Then you have another group of people that they're super, super happy where they are, and they don't want to do anything. They just want to they want to stay in the hospital. They love the position that they have. They love doing what they're doing. They'll do their CE and stuff like that, but they don't want to climb any ladder or anything like that. Thank you. Thank you, awesome humans, for that too, because they're so important as well. You just have to have those conversations to identify what does your team want. And I've said it to our own leaders in hospital. If you have somebody that's bringing up to you that they would like to, pursue more with their education or with their own career, and they're bringing it up to you, don't ignore it. That's where you go, okay, we need to have a conversation. We need to work on a plan. And what does this look like? Because I promise you, and I would literally, if I was a betting woman, I would put money on it. But I would say that they're already thinking about that. And so opportunities will present to them either at your hospital or somewhere else. So you need to nurture that.
Yes. And one of the best ways to recruit is by referral. So the person who left because you helped them is more likely to send wonderful people your way than if you don't help them, and then they will warn everyone who asked them on what's it like working for the hospital, that they feel supported in their growth. So I think that's also, and like you said, they're going to leave. You can either try to help them, and potentially when you try to help them, it could still be within the hospital, or, you will make an ambassador and they will send good people your way.
Exactly. And that's what we want to do in the industry, right? That's 100%. And we want them to stay in the veterinary industry.
Absolutely. So you said you wanted to give a shout out to Galaxy Vets, and we've had Dr. Ivan Zach on the podcast before as well. And I love his unique approach, his business model, the way that everyone is a part of the business as well, which is something else you mentioned as well. Is there anything specific that you have seen Galaxy do to help with the preventing the turnover and the shortage with veterinary technicians?
There's not just one thing. It's a whole bunch of things, right? So, yes, I have been extremely intrigued, obviously, with everything that Dr. Zach's vision has. Hence why I'm at Galaxy. But I loved it from the moment I heard about it, because I was like, wow, that's something that I have not seen yet in veterinary medicine. I think it's brilliant. Offering equity to absolutely everybody in the practice sure changes the landscape of what things look like for our futures, right? Like that's something that's been missing from veterinary industry for a long time, which is that it's that whole retirement strategy, right? It's like, well, what is retirement? We don't retire, which we won't.
We work until we die, right? No.
But truly and honestly, it's like, okay, well, now there's actually something that, the what's in it for me. Well, the what's in it for me is that you're literally part of the hospital success. So it's a huge learning opportunity. Nobody's had that opportunity that I've seen in the industry yet, especially just showing and proving the importance of every role in the hospital and validating that with everybody has a piece of the equity. Like that is huge. We cannot do the things that we do in the hospital without every single person that's in there. Every role is so important. And that's why I get so mad if I hear someone say, I'm just something or other. I'm like, don't you dare say that again.
I am the exact same way. Like I am just a fill in the blank. It's like, oh my goodness, that's
again.
Whether it's I'm just a mom or I am just a vet tech. I mean, you're exactly right. You're right. It gets me really mad too. So sorry.
But yes, so so they've done a lot of really great things at Galaxy. One of the things that I'm really proud of, and I can say that I've taken, I would say that it is my role. It's a huge part of my role. We have change in vet medicine nonstop, left, right, and center. Whether it's your new team members coming into a hospital is purchased by consolidator, like whatever the change looks like. It doesn't even matter. Like or I'm going to change a process, right? Like I'm going to change a process in the hospital. None of us really love change. We kind of talked about this a little bit. Our days are different every single day, but yet we don't like change. It's very, very interesting. The one thing that I have noticed though, is that we need to be more thoughtful when it comes to, we as an industry need to be more thoughtful when it comes to the changes that are happening in the veterinary industry. So for me, the connection that I made instantly with Ivan and Galaxy Vets was the thoughtfulness in change. So there is a process. There is a proper way to do it, and there's having the proper people doing it. So it's not just, hey, I can map out a process for anybody, which I can. It's done. I have it in really cool format, actually. But there's a thoughtfulness that comes with it. And it's understanding that the veterinary team consists of individuals that will all look at things in different ways. And so, understanding that we need to be able to manage that change properly to help through change. That's like 100% my jam. And that's what I love to do. So I'm really grateful to have a company that also believes in that as much as I do. It's a really big deal and something that I would really like to see more of in the industry. even if we're talking about change for a positive reason, like it doesn't matter what it is. And I guess I should rephrase that. Let's just say we're going to change a protocol for a pet that ends up being a huge benefit for the pet, but it's still a change in protocol. It's a mindset on the doctors, mindset on the techs. It could be like a whole process that we're dealing with that has to change. But we don't just dump that out on them. Like, let's actually work through how best to do this. And believe it or not, there is a process.
May not be a sexy term, but yeah.
It's literally called change management. And I mean, everybody at Galaxy gets sick and tired of hearing Shannon say those words, but it's, I love change management. I love it when it's done right. I love watching the results of it. And I love watching the people thrive in a positive change environment. So that's something that I'm super excited about.
Is there a good solid definition that you would give when you're trying to explain change management?
No, I honestly just say, like change management is a thoughtful process to take you from point A to point B on something that you would like to do different. So, I mean, no matter what that is, plug it in, right? Like plug in, you want to change your software system. Oh, did I just say that? Right? Like everyone hates that. It's like, okay, well, there's actually a thoughtful way of doing that. And it might sound fluffy in some cases, but it actually has like a very set process for how you do that. It's just being mindful of how you do it with the team and what you need for success. It will actually end up, if you do it properly with, say the right person leading that, you will find that your results you'll have buy-in way faster from the rest of the team. You'll have success with the rest of the team. And you will actually be really surprised with the results. They say that, you're 6 times more likely to have a more positive experience and results if you do things in a proper change management, thoughtful way. So I believe that, which is really cool.
Yes. And I'm sure a lot of that goes back to the topic that we were discussing around listening to people as well and making them part of the change and not just dropping it and waving and saying, have fun with that.
You can't dump things off on the doorstep, even in a nice little package, and say, here you go. So there is an actual thoughtful process to the whole way of doing it. So yeah.
I'm sure we could have a whole episode just on that. But for kind of as we wrap up, what are some of the biggest pieces of wisdom that you would give to veterinary technicians today?
It's one of my favorite questions because it almost, like, honestly, I've thought about having it tattooed on my wrist. But so one of the people that I used to work with, great leader. There's, I always say that if you could take away one thing that you've taken from somebody along the way, whether it's a good talk, whether it's, something that'll stick with you. The one thing for me is always think the highest thought. And I think that honestly, I don't do it all the time. I need to be reminded. I want somebody else to have it tattooed across their head so that when I'm looking, I can say, oh yeah, always think the highest thought. But it helps so much because I truly believe that everybody has good intentions. Not everybody that we work with in veterinary medicine has good intentions.
99% of the time. Yes.
Right? I truly believe that. And when you look at things with that lens, it sure changes perspective for you. If you try to think like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with this person, or what the heck are they trying to achieve here, or anything like that, but just think and stop and think and say, always think the highest thought. Always think the highest thought. It's almost like giving people the benefit of the doubt before you literally go down that path. And I find that is extremely helpful. And it's something that's helpful personally and professionally. I think it's fantastic. So That's my big one. It's a huge one. I literally have wanted to get it tattooed on my wrist because I do believe it so much. And it has helped me in my career a lot. There's a bunch of other ones too, but that's a big one.
I think that one is helpful even to the individual. You're putting yourself in a much happier, positive mindset to embrace life than always, assuming that it's the 1% that has the bad intention. So I think it's beneficial for our own health.
Is, and I've had to apply it, like even when I was a manager and I was listening to a client complain, right? I was like, oh my goodness, like I could totally take this one way. Or if I am thinking the highest thought, which you really have to put that on sometimes when you're when you're talking to certain people. But it really helped me because I'm like, okay, where is this person coming from? Like, what is their intention? Like, they're stressed, right? If you start to break it down and start to look at where it's coming from, you can see it doesn't work for everything, but it really does help. And it helps when you think, okay, like this client is really, truly, honestly trying to come at things with the best intentions. It's just not being communicated as effectively as it could. So
I think that was the most common conversation I had with my technicians was I acknowledged that what they were dealing with on the phone, yes, that is very frustrating. I know it does not feel great to have someone yell at you or talk that way. However, they are probably getting it on the other end. They are probably being yelled at. They're probably having a very stressful day. So it's hard. Sometimes you give yourself just a second to wow, this is not comfortable. But to then reflect, like you said, sometimes you have to really work on it, be very intentional. Maybe it is having a sign on your desk, a sticky note on the phone. You got this. Absolutely. No, I think that's a great way to end. I think that's such a good takeaway for any human being out there in the world.
Exactly. Professionally, personally, it is truly, honestly, words of wisdom. I love them.
Yes. Sometimes it may be harder at home in your personal life. So that's very good.
Always think the highest thought. Why aren't those dishes done?
Exactly. Yep. That was a thought I had this morning. Okay. You're reading my mind. But all right. So I always like to end with the final 4 questions, and I'm really excited because I hope to get to know you a little bit more with these questions. What is something that people might get wrong about you?
Ooh, this one's actually really funny because everyone always obviously thinks personality wise and everything that I'm a total extrovert. And interestingly enough, I have a lot of extroverted qualities, but I am an introvert. So I actually need to take breaks and just be with my animals and be alone. So I love to socialize and I love to meet people and everything. But then my batteries recharge when I'm alone, not the other way around. So It's interesting. Everyone always thinks the opposite.
Very good to know. So at the end of the day, when you're walking out, let me walk out. What is a hidden skill or interest that you have?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm super crafty. So, yeah. So I like to make things. I like to refinish things. And one of the biggest things, so I refinish furniture all the time. Ultimate recycler. And for me and my family, so my husband and I, we actually completely recycled this house that we live in.
Recycled it.
Not too many people can say that about their recycling. So we actually, in where I live, we don't have a ton of trees. So it is actually possible to move buildings. And so what they do here is that they will sell a building that's needing to be moved or something like that instead of demoing it. And so what we did was we actually took the old rugby clubhouse from an avenue in Calgary and we repurposed it and made it a house. So that's my ultimate.
That's really cool. So I'm really intrigued. So I have to ask. So for my rugby house to a living house, what is probably the most like cool room transformation, or like I'm curious for a story. Like what's your favorite part of
Well,
that house?
so I love open concept. So if you can
Uh-huh.
imagine like an A-frame structure,
Okay.
that it's all open concept. So we had to build walls to put bedrooms in and stuff like that. But down the middle, it's all A-frame, and it's about 15 feet. So what my husband did was he actually put a fireplace like right in the middle. So it's a double-sided wood burning fireplace. And so
Cool.
we have the dining room on one side and tons of windows, and then we have the living room on the other side. So it kept that open concept feel. But I love that feature, and it's all stone. So it's
Ooh, that sounds amazing. Ah, very cool. Third question is, what is something that is on your bucket list?
my degree. Yeah. So like I said, I am a constant learner. So I actually believe that you're never too old to go back to school. So I've been trying to isolate down to, like, obviously I have many things that I'm passionate about. So I took my schooling for the change management courses and everything like that. So I'm pursuing that designation. That being said, though, I have a very strong passion for people, as you know. So I'm kind of looking at either if I want to dive into psychology, or if I want to do something along the lines of like e-commerce, or business relation, like just something. I haven't quite figured that out. It's like the business side of me wants to do one thing, the other side of me wants to do the psychology and learn more about the brain and human psyche.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of crossover. There's
Yeah.
a lot of psychology in e-commerce, sales, business. So I think either direction you could get both. So think about it that way too.
Oh, and I'm like, man, I just need to find, a little bit more time in my day, but that is my goal. I want my degree. That's my bucket list. I will do it.
I believe it. I have no worries there. And what the last question is, what is something you are most grateful for?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I always just say the first thing that comes to your mind, right? So I'm always most grateful for my family. Without them, I would not be where I am today doing anything. Family is everything, 100%.
This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.